Well, we're sitting on the veranda of the story shed here in Dubbo, and I'm sitting with my friend Lucas Frost, and he's brought a group of young people here on a pilgrimage, partly in response to the chapter in this book that I've written on Tell Me Another. And Lucas, what made you want to do this with this group of young people?
We started Immerse, it's called, as a miniature response to what Cornerstone used to do in their training with young people in the campuses that we had. So they come alongside us in Bendigo with our community for 5 months. They get involved in the connections that we have with people in the neighbourhood. We do some teaching with them, and then they find some work to support themselves, and then they just get involved in each other's lives and the lives of young people they're connecting with. We decided to do this mostly as a response to your challenge to take Australian Christian history and story seriously. So last year we came and went on our little pilgrimage for about a week. This year we're going for 10 days, and we've designed it so that we connect with a whole bunch of people who are part of the broader Cornerstone network. So far on this trip we've visited Sydney, Western Sydney, we went to Katoomba, we've been to Canowindra, Orange, and now we're in Dubbo.
Yep. Lucas, one of the things that I put in that chapter was what I'd learned, that when you join the story to the place, something happens, a 1 + 1 = 3 effect, that it adds another dimension to it. Do you think that's been happening?
Yeah, I think so. We've been, I especially think here in Dubbo, where a lot more of the focus has been on thinking about our Australian Christian story. So looking at the RFDS Museum, hearing about the story of John Flynn. We went down to the main street and looked at the statue of Bill Ferguson. I think that's really helped these young people to see the impact that these historical figures have had on Australia, and a very strong sense that it comes out of a response to Jesus and their faith in Jesus.
One of the things about storytelling that's, I suppose, strong with me is that it's eye to eye, mind to mind, and heart to heart. Like to hear a first-person storyteller like Riverbank Frank Doolan, Wiradjuri elder here in Dubbo, tell them that the story of Bill Ferguson personally had a great effect, I think.
Yeah, I think the power of that was the authority that he has as an elder and someone who's on the ground in Dubbo, connected to his community.
Well, he was literally on the ground, wasn't he?
He was.
He squats down on the ground.
Yeah.
And there's something about that he's humble.
Yeah.
But he's strong.
Yeah, and I think they took it seriously, what he was saying, especially the challenge to be confident in our stories as followers of Jesus, that it's those people responding to Jesus' story that's made a huge transformation to this whole country, and we need to have confidence in that. So I think that message came through loud and clear.
Another thing I chatted about is that pilgrimage, taking you out of your comfort zone, out of routine church performance, out of your home environment, creates what some people call a liminal space, a sort of a neutral zone, perhaps outside all the things where the volume of other things is turned down, and you're able to hear this larger story. Do you think that's beginning to happen?
I think for the young people that are part of our Immerse program, they're already in that liminal space, in that they've moved away from their homes and they've come to join us in Bendigo. So they've all come from regional New South Wales and down to Victoria. So I think they're sort of already in that space. It was really interesting hearing from one of the guys who he spent a couple of days back home with his family in Orange, and it really made him realise the difference that being in Bendigo has made to him, in that there's probably some stuff going on in Orange where he wasn't really using his time that well, and realising that sort of in being in that challenging space in Bendigo has been really good for him. And then bringing them on the pilgrimage, I think then is taking another step and saying, right, well, let's go on a journey. Let's go and hear some stories. Let's go and hear from people who are sort of living out their faith in a real way. And be challenged by that, and I can see that that's had a good impact in him.
In terms of your overall program, you're teaching in the classroom, you're sort of living in a community that they're close by the Bendigo community, watching all sorts of things happening there. How does a pilgrimage fit into that, do you think?
I think it's probably taking a step back from that community and going and visiting a whole other places in regional Australia and hearing the stories of those places. I think the most powerful thing for them is probably seeing people who've had a significant experience with Cornerstone in the past, especially, who are then just living out the reality of a faith that is worked out in ordinary life. So whether it's in their workplaces, in their neighbourhoods, but each place we go to, it's different, and but with all of them, there's the sort of footprints of Jesus that are there, a powerful part of each of the places we've gone. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So if you're wrapping up and you're saying to somebody, it's really good idea to have a pilgrimage, what would you say to them? What are the components that make it work?
I think probably having time. So this year we've extended it out a little bit. Last year we just went for about a week. This year I think having a bit more time and a bit more space to be in places and not just sort of turn up, hear some stories and we go to the next place, but actually stopping and having the chance to reflect. The good thing's been we've heard the stories, we've seen the places, we've talked to people, and then we have some space to just stop and say, okay, what are you learning from this experience? Like that. I think that idea of if you don't learn to reflect on your experiences, then you're not really going to learn. So that's probably one key, is having time to reflect. And I also think that idea of a liminal space, one of the interesting things you say in your book is how a liminal space can actually be a negative thing. If you don't have the right interpreters and storytellers on the way, then you can go searching within that discomfort for, like you talk about people who got caught up on the drug trail in Asia and things like that. I think you've got to have the right stories that you're hearing from and the right kind of input and challenge. And I think that's been a really key part of our pilgrimage, is finding people that we know and we trust who've got good stories and are doing really interesting things, and then connecting with them.
Yeah, we started off, I think, I introduced the story of Richard Dawkins, who's been the new atheist leader and voice to the world, at Easter time, saying, well, actually, I'm a cultural Christian. I like what the Christians have given to my country. I don't believe a thing they believe. And I think that's a picture of Australia. I think Australians like the thought of being culturally Christian, but have moved away from the religious part. But as we were saying today, well, you can't really have a flying doctor service without a man of faith at the core of it. That's going to be important for them to hear and see, I think, isn't it? Like you say, to have an interpreter there to say, it's not just a great story, but what's it going to mean for you with your life? And I think that's what Frank Doolan was saying to them in the street. This story is now your story. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, I think that the challenge there, I've sort of experienced this idea recently. I've been talking with a young man who's a teacher back in Bendigo, and he's really drawn to the Christian faith, and he loves the Christian faith and loves the morals of it. But he said to me, can I have all of that without having to have the religious aspect? And I was thinking about it after hearing the John Flynn story again today, and thinking about that, and hearing from Riverbank Frank and Bill Ferguson, all these great people. I feel like that a genuine faith is actually the engine room that gives the power to the actions that people do.
Staying power.
Yeah, because I think that there's a lot of people in our culture now who would agree with all those good things that people are doing, but I don't see that energy and that impetus to go and make it happen. And I think there's something powerful that happens when you really connect with the living God, and life fits together properly because you have your identity worked out in who Jesus is and who his love for us. Then I think that gives us the power to then go and do those. I think probably what I realised is that a lot of these stories, they end up with a great big picture at the end, but they're built with all these little tiny steps
Mm.
and a lot of unseen thing, like all the stuff that they would have done in the background to organise and
plodding
create.
along, yeah.
And I think we probably undervalue that because we all love something that's epic and big, and we want to see something that's really making a difference. But to make a powerful difference, I think takes that stuff that happens in the quiet and that no one else sees. But I think if you have a genuine faith, then you know that God sees that. He sees, what happens behind closed doors and in your own inner world. That's the power that I think can lead to the transformation that does the big stuff.
Yeah.
So that's probably the big lesson for me through all of this.
A long obedience in the same direction.
Yeah.
To be a stayer.
Yeah.
And that's
and
great.
it doesn't happen just automatically. You don't just have an idea. I think ideas need that motivation to... And I think the best motivation is the fact that we're known and loved. And I saw that connecting with a couple of the teachers who I'd never met before, but a couple of teachers from the Christian school in Dubbo came out and talked to us, and they were part of Cornerstone 40 years ago or something like that, and had a powerful impact in their lives and their worlds that they're still living out now. And you could see that something had impacted them of the life of Jesus, and that was still being a motivator for them 40 years later.
So a pilgrimage is worthwhile.
Yeah, well, it's been great because we just get to talk to so many good people and hear so many good stories.
Yeah.
And I think the really powerful thing for these guys is that they're seeing a whole lot of different models of how faith can get lived out right now, but they're also looking backwards and seeing the impact that people of faith has had as well.
Great, thanks mate.
No problem.